Hello again, gamers. This video is sponsored by EA, as is pretty much tradition at this point for most Apex content. Just as a heads up, I am currently in the process of moving cross-country to a brand new state, brand new job, and we're a little lacking on time to make a lot of this this content on the schedule that I would like to do so. So apologies if I miss a week here or there, or if I need to double up here or there just to kind of keep things flowing. But yeah, today we're going to be talking about my thoughts on balance in Apex Legends, specifically with the spin of what if I were the king of respawn. So, full disclaimer, I think the game is, for the most part, in a pretty good state of balance right now, but there are some outliers that I would like to see addressed in one way or another. So we'll start off with weapons, then we'll go into Legends, and I want this more than anything to be a discussion piece on just kind of figuring out, are my opinions on the game and on the state of balance in agreement with yours and the vast majority of the rest of the communities, or are they completely out of left base and do a left base, left field, I think is what I should mean there. And just, we can have a chat together about it. It's not meant to be like a super toxic, like, I am a better developer, I can, no, just kind of more meant to just talk about where I'm at with the game right now, how I'm feeling about it, and kind of getting your all's take as well. So let's dive in. We'll start with assault rifles. We're just going to go right down the list of kind of where I think everything is at. So this is going to be kind of tier listy, but not really, because I don't really feel comfortable to go into a deep dive tier list right now with how little I've been playing Apex due to real life and just my complete lack of involvement with ranked this season. I don't want to get too deep, but we'll start with the Havoc. I do feel that this gun is very, very underrated at this point in time. Its DPS and TTK are still excellent. They're still fantastic across the board. The gun has received almost nothing but nerfs ever since it's come out. I mean, that's not entirely true, but it's trended down quite a bit since it's come out, and I think that's pretty fair to say. But most of these things, at least recently, the more recent nerfs to Havoc, they're more in regards to its recoil, its control while firing in full auto, but your damage stats are still excellent on this thing. So, like, just like it's always been, if you're able to get yourself into a favorable situation with this weapon, if you can deal with the spin up or get a turbocharger, I mean, the damage is there. The accuracy with practice is there, but it's not going to feel like a laser like your R301 might feel like at pretty much all ranges. The Havoc is going to take quite a bit more work to do and to do well. And on top of all that, because so few people use it, and the only energy weapon that is really used right now is the Volt, it's just kind of difficult to find energy mags, difficult to find energy ammo, and the overall difficulty of just making an energy weapon work in the current metagame of Season 8, it's kind of tough to justify taking this weapon when you could grab an R301 or a Hemi or a Flatline instead, or even a G7, depending on how you prefer to play. But it's kind of hard to justify Havoc right now. But I do think this is kind of a sleeper pick that people are not really, they're just not even going for. Like they're giving up on it a little bit too quickly, I find. And if you were to go into firing range and actually practice this weapon on like a daily or a couple times a week basis, I feel like this is still a great option that people are just not going for. I wouldn't really recommend to Respawn, or as King of Respawn, I would not decree that any balance changes would come to this weapon necessarily, but I think that given like some other overall changes to the game or to the maps or to the energy economy as a whole, some other change I think would have a trickle down or trickle up, or however you wanted to call it, effect on the Havoc to make it a more valuable weapon on the whole. I think that it doesn't need any changes in and of itself, but something else could give just a little bit, and the Havoc was going to instantly jump right back into the meta, as it were. Next up, Flatline. Still excellent gun. Not personally my favorite. I wouldn't put it much higher than like a B tier if I had to rate it, where like it's like strong. If you are good and practiced with it, you can kill people very, very quickly. DPS, TTK, very good on this weapon, But personally, I find the recoil is a little bit difficult to control because I do not practice it very often. So it's kind of difficult for me to justify picking up in an actual match. So, you know, there is that whole thing. But if you're practiced with it, the gun is fine. I wouldn't really necessarily suggest this weapon specifically needs any kind of balance change in and of itself to make it like better or worse or whatever. It is just a fine weapon as it is. And I think we're going to find that a lot of the weapons in Apex right now just fit in this bucket where they are a-okay as they are and not a lot of changes need to happen. My only complaint with this weapon that I wish that Respawn would address on a whole is that the iron sights between a regular version of the skin, like you know, your regular epics, and then the iron sights on this battle pass version of the skin are vastly different to kind of to a degree that I think is just like is really just not okay. I'll jump into firing range really quickly to illustrate that. It's kind of hard because I can't just change skins on the fly and just do editing magic to like make it work. I guess I could go into post and edit it, but I mean, realistically, there is just a massive change between what your stock iron sights let you see versus the battle pass skins iron sights, and this is just a fundamental problem across many skins in Apex Legends. Okay, it's gonna take me so long to queue into firing range. I'll just do this in post. I'll get like some photos or screenshots, I should say, and just you know, kind of go through that with you all. But you know, there's a number of weapons that have significantly different iron sights where basically there is a pay-to-win version of the weapon where you just have significantly, like, disgustingly better iron sights, and it's just not even a fair comparison. Kind of one of those things I've talked to Respawn devs about before, and basically it's just kind of a miscommunication between, like, art departments and then, like, game design and balance people. And, you know, the art department's kind of won out, and now that they have all the skins the way they are, they can't really go back and change it. And it's a thing that I think Respawn devs in some capacity are aware of and don't want, but it's just kind of something they can't really do much about anymore. Moving on, G7. It's a weapon I personally do not like, but you see plenty of this in high-level ranked and tournaments and stuff like that. This is an objectively strong gun, an objectively powerful gun. I would not really change too much in terms of the balance for this one either. I think the G7 is pretty much a-okay as it is. If I had to give it anything, I might maybe say the hipfire spread on it is even better than it already is, just to make it like more usable in a PC-centric metagame where you basically, if you have an assault rifle or an LMG or a sniper or something like that with a very slow 80 strafing speed while aiming down sights, it is a fool's errand to actually aim down sights and try to use that weapon because you're going to be moving so slow that your opponent is just going to auto-lock onto your head with their Wingman, with their R9, with their Volt, whatever better gun than you they have, and just obliterate you. And you cannot possibly have the DPS to compete with that, even if everyone were to have 100% accuracy. Like, just because you are moving so slowly and your head would be just so easy to hit, it's just kind of a fool's errand to actually use the gun anywhere outside of your actual intended long-range engagement with this thing. So not personally to my taste. If I were King of Respawn, I would give it a little bit better hip fire while being crouched or something like that, so that way I can crouch spam and I can be evasive while using it and have just slightly better accuracy to actually fight back against someone who hot drops with me and they get R9 Peacekeeper or R9 Mastiff or whatever, and I just get like G7 30-30 and I just brick. At least I can fight back a little better without having to just full run and hope that I have a good head glitch to like defend myself from. So that's the only kind of change I would make that would affect like G7 and 30-30 both. It's like a little better hip fire performance I think would be really good, which is kind of funny because we're going into Hemlock next, which again, I'm in the same boat here. The Hemlock was very recently nerfed in that its hip fire was just dumpstered, and I really do not like this change on a fundamental level, because the big problem I think with Hemlock is that the DPS in TTK and the ease of hitting full 3-shot bursts repeatedly on people from medium to long ranges while aimed down sights is what made the gun so incredibly powerful. being able to select fire between burst and single fire while having like good close range, good mid range, and good long range performance all in one gun made it so much more attractive than a 30-30, made it comparable to an SMG in some instances or a shotgun in some instances, and it just would kind of do everything. So making it dumpstered at the short range but still good at medium long range and having that versatility at those ranges, I don't think is really the kind of space I would want personally this gun to occupy. I think that if I were King of Respawn, I would go the opposite direction with the Hemlock, where I might even get rid of the single fire, and I would say you could only have 3-round burst, and we're going to increase the recoil a little bit on that 3-round burst, but I would keep the hip fire pretty much the same. So that way, this is a gun that you can use at close to medium range to combat R9s, to combat Volts, to combat Wingman, to combat shotguns, but it is also acceptable at dealing with R301. It's acceptable at dealing with a good flatline user, especially one with Anvil. This is acceptable at dealing with a G7 Scout user. But, you know, maybe it kind of struggles against 30-30 and G7 from long ranges because the recoil, even with a good barrel, is just simply a little bit too high unless you really slow down your bursts and you get really, really good at controlling those bursts. I think that's the niche or niche I would want this weapon to occupy, much more than the, hey, we're going to dumpster the close range version and make it so it's just like, you know, still god tier at medium to long range, but it's just terrible up close. It's just not what I want to see out of a game where when you're playing in a PC-centric metagame and you have wraiths and lifelines and small hitboxes in your face, 80 strafing at 1,000,000 miles an hour and zipline jumping and doing, you know, your what is it, like the W strafing midair, tap strafing, whatever, and people can move like absurdly well at close ranges at really, really high speeds. Like, you need weapons that are versatile in helping you deal with that. Whereas the long range game is always going to be very slow, always very simple, always pretty samey for the most part. We don't need 100 different options to like basically choose from in those fights, but letting more weapons be acceptable in close range and just like not a complete dumpster pick for those is really, really good. Because again, think of all the hot drop situations where you drop hot. Let's say you get a Hemlock and you get an RE45 versus your opponent who gets a Volt and they get, I don't know, like, it doesn't really matter what the other gun is at that point, but they get a Volt or they get an R9 or even they get like an Eva with a purple bolt and a good amount of ammo, and you just don't really have a whole lot to deal with that. Like, if they get in their appropriate range, which on a hot drop is very, very easy, they will just laser you down and dumpster you based on just RNG alone of getting the couple of really good close range guns, but you don't have a whole lot to compete. Like, you have some like okay stuff, but nothing really good enough to compete. Whereas if we let the Hemlock be really good, it just adds to your tools of like weapons that could be acceptable in the close range and could be okay enough to at least give you some breathing room against other people who drop hot near you. Or like, say for example, it's you and one of the team in a POI, and they note that you're splitting off from your other two teammates to take on other buildings. That way your loot isn't completely scuffed. And then all three of them decide they're all going to drop on your building and they're going to punch you out and they're going to play the ping battle on picking up weapons off the floor. So there's three of them that could potentially loot three different little tiny patches in your building, and all of them could get a gun, whereas you don't. And like, maybe you get a Hemi and they get something better, and it's like, well, you're in this 1v3. Should you be able to win? Probably not. Should you be able to have a gun that can at least defend yourself somewhat consistently? Yes. And like, in this category, the only weapons you can consistently defend yourself with in those close range, you have Havoc, Flatline, and R301. Hemlock has been nerfed to the point where it is no longer like in that category because of the hipfire nerfs. You just can't defend yourself. So I don't know. I really want to see all three of these guns have improved hipfire performance, and maybe like a reduction in their long-range performance, so that way we can have some differentiation between assault rifles and snipers in some capacity, or even assault rifles and LMGs. Like, perhaps LMGs could retain some really good long-range performance. Maybe not All-Star, but like Spitty or Devo or something. I don't know. Maybe we're getting a little bit too wacky and wild here, but I mean, I just want to see more weapons acceptable at close range, and right now we just simply do not have that, and I think Respawn is kind of failing in that role. I would really want to see, if nothing else, Hemlock brought into a more close to mid-range role rather than like the medium long-range role with the close range dumpstered. I just don't like that. 3030 is just a horrible, awful weapon as it currently stands. Your DPS is bad, your TTK is bad. It's a weapon that forces you to stay aimed down sights for a long period of time to get the charge up on your shot, which is just a death sentence when you're using an assault rifle because your AD strafing speed is so incredibly slow. There is effectively no reason to use this weapon over a Wingman, period, end. Like, Wingman does very similar damage. It has access to the Skull Piercer hop-up, which this weapon does not. It has very similar ammo economy, has a better rate of fire, generally speaking, a pretty favorable damage per second TTK. You're more evasive with that gun. You're just as long-range spammy with that gun while retaining your close-range performance. Like, there is literally no reason to pick this gun up ever if you could have a Wingman instead, unless maybe you were in a console-centric metagame and you're in, like, the lower end of that console-centric metagame where, like, if you slap a bruiser or a 3x on this thing, the aim assist will just let you rip and take control of a lot of really slow-paced fights. Where the Wingman, you may not get that same level of aim assist on. So, like, I guess you can go to that level, but I'm sure I'm already going to have about a 30% dislike ratio on that video for even saying the words aim assist, because how dare you mention aim assist. So let's just move on from that topic. I don't think the 3030 is a good gun for the game. I don't think it brings anything of value to the game. I think this is a dumpster pick. I think this is just a weapon that deserves to be reworked from the ground up, because a lot of development time and effort went into making this gun look good and sound good and feel good to pick up and hold in your hands, but God, does it just do no damage, and it feels bad from a gameplay perspective to actually use. So definitely, as King of Respawn, 3030 needs a lot of help. Moving into SMGs, wow, we're almost 20 minutes in, and I've only talked about assault rifles. Alternator, fine as is. That 1 point of damage that they got in Season 8, it's actually, like, a solid gun. Would I take an R9 over it? Yes, every single time. Would I take a Volt over it? Yes, every single time. Would I take a Prowler over it? Yes, every single time. But the Alternator is still good. Like, if I get into an endgame situation where I dropped cold, I fought no enemies, I just could not find good loot, I couldn't get an R9, or I didn't want to spend 5 minutes per POI to hunt for an R9, and I'm just trying to, like, hold W towards bullets to actually, like, you know, shoot people in my first-person shooter game, and I don't want to play the looting game because it's boring. Like, the Alternator is plenty good. It is more than good enough in that... in like that mid to late game role where, like, if I have to go up against someone with red armor and an R9, well, I've got purple and an Alternator, I'm not so far behind that I can't compete. I think that's like kind of the big thing that I'm trying to get to here is, like, I don't feel like I'm significantly far behind with an Alternator in its current state now. I think that I can compete, and if I can play, like, a really good angle or good head glitch, and I can get a good like a good set of tracking on somebody's head, like, the headshot damage on this thing is great. It's just, the gun will kill very quickly. Especially, like, I've seen plenty of clips on Twitter and stuff of cheaters using the Alternator, and it's like shockingly good in the hands of a cheater with 100% accuracy at all times. So, like, if I can emulate that with, like, actual real aim, like, hey, it's no R9, it's no Volt, but gun's good enough. I definitely would not want to see any further changes to the Alternator. I would really want to see just, like, some kind of minor, basic, kind of crappy, not super effectual hop-up beyond it, like Quick Draw or something like that, just to give me, like, an extra reason to maybe use it over an R9, something that might, like, tip the scales, but not so much where it's, like, if I have a fully kitted R9 and I kill someone with the Alternator and hop-up, I'm not like, let's go for the Alternator hop-up instead because that's better, like, you know, Disruptor rounds days. Like, I think the R9 should still be, like, the better gun, but something that, like, just might even edge the Alternator up even more, you know, if you're just really bricking on finding an R9, but you do get an Alternator with hop-up, like, you know, you got something, like, to compete that seems pretty okay. Like, what if Alternator had mini Skull Piercer, you know? Just something interesting like that. Although, I don't think Skull Piercer from a design standpoint is even a good hop-up, but, you know, just something to give Alternator just a little kick that's not just straight damage, or maybe even just, like, you know, maybe even some straight damage in, like, a very, very minor way that's not, like, as toxic as Disruptor rounds was. I don't know. This is a gun that I'm really, really comfortable with right now, and I think it's in a good spot. Prowler, there's not much to say. It's a care package weapon right now. It's ridiculously strong, just like it always has been. I wouldn't really change much about it. I like the fact that it gets so many bullets when you pick it up off a care package right now. It's with how the gun works, you really want to be spraying a lot and just bullet hosing people with this thing. So you have a pretty fair amount of bullets. I wouldn't say it's generous, but it's like a fair amount of ammo for like the state of the game where you'll be picking this thing up in. And DPS, TTK, all like R9 tier, but with none of the work of having to build your R9 or acquire ammo for it and compete with your teammates who are also running R9s. Like, Prowler's in a good spot right now. I wouldn't change much with it at all. R9, I think this has been one of, if not the best guns in the game since day one. That's not necessarily a problem in and of itself, to have like one weapon just always be like a top tier pick and always being kind of the weapon the meta is built around. And God, look at how many legendary skins I have for this thing. What the heck? I didn't even realize how many of these do I have? Jeez. Anyways, yeah, like, I mean, I guess that just goes to show, right? Like, the R9 is kind of like the poster child. This is like kind of just the baby of Apex Legends, where everyone wants this thing, everyone loves this thing. This is just the gun to have and the gun to play around. I don't think that's necessarily a problem to have kind of like your rock to like anchor everything down and like for everything else to work off of. So I mean, really, if they were to drop R9 damage by one bullet, I'm sorry, let me try that again. If they were to drop R9 damage by bullet like by 1 point, I would be okay with that for the most part. I don't think I would necessarily have any kind of issues there. That would be pretty okay in my opinion, just because like everyone uses this gun pretty much at all times, and I don't think that people are going to stop using it even if you drop a point of damage from it. And that would kind of help to create a little bit more differentiation with the Volt, where like, hey, the Volt might actually have a little better DPS and TTK now, but if the rest of the energy weapons kind of suck or are out of the meta, then it's kind of tough to consistently use Volt, just like it might be now, because it's sometimes tough to find energy ammo or energy attachments because there's not enough good energy weapons for people to justify picking them up and running them and having those attachments for you when you kill them. So like, could create an interesting differentiation, but at the same point, or at the same time, I do kind of want to see an overall energy buff. So if both R9 and Volt were brought down yet again, I think that would be okay for the game as well. But then again, I am a player that is pretty much always in favor of longer TTK, longer times to kill, less damage per bullet, like on spray, like, easy to use guns like these. Just to like, again, create a little bit more differentiation between like the low, medium, and high skill players, where like you can't just laser someone down in an instant, unless you're really hitting your headshots and like you're really doing a good job on like your aim positioning. And it's just kind of feels like these guns rip maybe a little bit too hard, but I don't think that they're at a point where they're necessarily a problem for the game. Like, to use some of the nomenclature I did back in the tier lists between like A tier and S tier. An S tier weapon would generally be one that I think is a problem for the game. I think is overpowered in a bad way, and that it is actually damaging to the rest of the game by it existing in the way that it is. And very few things could ever actually reach that. Like, just because something is like silly strong and like definitely the correct choice 100% of the time over any other weapon, it doesn't necessarily mean that it is overpowered in a degree that ruins the game. And I think R9 and Volt just tread that line, even after the balance changes they've recently had, where it's like, really, like, these weapons are defining of the game at a high level. Like, these are weapons that you always want to have at least one, if not more, of on your team if you have the ammo and attachments to support them, like on the team as a whole. But like, I don't think they're necessarily a problem for the game. I think they're just simply very, very powerful, and it's okay to have some like quote unquote build around weapons like these. Moving into LMGs, Devotion, I guess it's kind of in the same tier as Havoc, and that I think it's still a very powerful weapon. I think it is still an underutilized weapon. But I don't know. I just don't think that I want to play in a metagame where the devotion is a super powerful weapon. I kind of want this to be a niche thing. So this is kind of in a weird place where if you have to pick this thing up off the ground, it is way too difficult to actually build up and tier up into being a really, really strong weapon. Like, it's really difficult to get the energy ammo to support this, to get the turbocharger, which, like, nobody ever has. So you have to drop cold. You have to look for those vaults and, like, all the weird far out of the way places to try to find your legendary hop-up for this thing. Among all the other attachments that you need. It's just tough to build this, and it doesn't really consistently serve as an attachment holder for anything else besides a Volt. Like, this is only an attachment holder for the Volt, and that's kind of its only purpose in the game right now. And that's kind of okay, but I think this is going to be like the first piece of interesting feedback we've had in the last half hour of this video, where it's like, okay, maybe if I were King of Respawn, what I would do is to start combating some of like the loot pool bloat that we're experiencing with like all the new weapons that have been added over the last few seasons, and now we have the survival slot, which is going to add another item to the game, being the heat shields, which are going to be on the ground. And yeah, you know, we're getting to the point where there's just a lot of things that are in the game, right? And we need to start kind of compartmentalizing them and kind of reining in what can be on the floor and how other weapons will exist within the game, right? So I think something that could be very, very interesting would be, if you remember a little game called Hyperscape. Remember how instead of there being attachments and stuff like that, you would pick up the gun, and then every time you find another one of that same gun, you would upgrade the one you have. So like you would have like a level 0 devotion, and then like you'll find another devotion and you'll level up the one you have to level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4, whatever, right? I think it would be really cool if Respawn were to take kind of a combination of that, or maybe that little takeover event they had where all those care packages would drop with fully kitted weapons. Something in there where like maybe the devotion and at least one other weapon would fit in there, where maybe they're really, really difficult to build as floor loot, and they're just never used because it's just so inconsistent to actually build them. And instead of like changing the power levels of them significantly, or putting them in like the major care packages where they're like an heirloom tier or red tier weapon with like ridiculous stats, maybe something in between where it's like, okay, the devotion, instead of being floor loot, is now going to be something that you can go out of your way to get, like in the Kings Canyon vaults or in the World's Edge vaults or something, where it can spawn in there, but it will be blue rarity or it will be purple rarity. So like maybe you don't have the turbocharger hop up, but you do have otherwise a fully kitted weapon that you just pick up and have. So like now, instead of having to focus on getting all the attachments and taking the risk of running an ostensibly bad gun until you get all the hop-ups to make it an overpowered good gun, and you don't have that massive swinginess where it's just not worth the risk of doing. Suddenly now you say, okay, we should make the player go to a specific point on the map where they could, at that point, get a devotion, and if they get the devotion to spawn there, then they have the decision of, okay, do I want to keep my R9 Wingman, or do I want to maybe drop the Wingman and go for this fully kitted devotion and my R9 instead? And then, you know, now instead of having to search for all the attachments and the ammo and the legendary hop-up, now it's just like, no. You just have like a blue rarity devotion where it's like you have a decently sized magazine, not amazing, but decent. You have a good barrel, like a decent hop-up, or a decent barrel, not the best, but a good one. You don't have to go searching for all that other garbage. You get a little bit of energy ammo with the gun. You have to go scavenge for more energy ammo, and that's all you care about. This is getting the energy, and that's it, right? I think that in itself could be very, very cool. So I don't know what other guns might fit in that category. L-Star is just in like a really stupid place right now where like you only use it off drop for the most part, and then you just never take it ever again. Like even the Legend, who is all about having a passive that buffs LMGs in Rampart, even she just does not care about the L-Star whatsoever. So I think it could be kind of interesting to see both of these guns. It's kind of funny, they're both energy LMGs. You know, who would have thought that the energy LMGs would be the ones to just never be used in any competitive way ever for pretty much any reason, at least in the current state of balance for the game. finding a way to basically take these X care package weapons and bring them back into the world, maybe not with their care package power, but certainly with more power than they currently have, and just finding like a happy medium for them so these stop dropping in the world as random world drops and they start spawning as something that is actually useful and is a compelling pickup. The corollary to that is that because these weapons would no longer spawn in the traditional loot pool, then you're going to have less energy ammo spawning in the world, because typically speaking, weapons that spawn will usually have 1 or 2, sometimes 3 bricks of ammo that spawn with them on that little like loot pool on the ground. So by removing Devo and L-Star from the loot pool, you're going to need to find a way to bring energy ammo back into people's hands. It might just be that bricks on the ground are worth more for the few energy weapons that are left, or something along that line of thinking. Like maybe you really, like, if you want to go for energy weapons, we just make all the energy weapons super strong, but you have to interact with crafting stations to get the ammo for them consistently and make them actually super usable. I don't know. I don't really know where like they could go on that front. I think that is into a much deeper game design discussion than we can get into with the scope of this in the scope of this video, but definitely something that we can we can theorize about maybe in a more long form format at another time. Moving on from these just ostensibly bad and useless LMGs, which as King of Respawn I would find a new solution for them. Spitfire. I'm really torn on Spitfire as of Season 8. I like the fact they gave it a little bit more damage to make it just that little bit more usable against like assault rifles basically, and actually like a more consistently strong weapon. But man, the iron sights on this thing suck. Man, the control on this thing sucks, because your 80 strafing speed while aimed on sights is just so terrible. Your hip fire is like great at barrel stuffing. Point blank range is like 3 meters or less, but anything beyond that, just terrible, awful, horrible, like almost unusable. This is a weapon that I'm confused about, because on aim assist centric, console controller centric metagames, I just hear nothing but, oh my god, the Spitfire is OP, it's OP, I hate it, it's too strong, yada yada yada. And then on keyboard and mouse centric metagames, I just don't hear that at all. Like a little bit, but really I don't. And when I get to end game situations and like, the last couple of teams fighting, I barely see Spitfires. Like this is just a weapon that just does not make it to those final circles. Like it will get swapped out for a Wingman or a Flatline or a Hemlock in those final situations, as opposed to just keeping the Spitty. So this is not, of course, always true, but anecdotally in my playtime, that is just what I have noticed. So if I were King of Respawn, I don't really know what I would do with Spitfire. I think this is another weapon that I think maybe could use a hop-up where, okay, like sure, you generally are going to want to have Wingman, Hemlock, or Flatline over this thing on a PC-centric metagame a lot of the times, but maybe some kind of hop-up that would make it better for, keyboard and mouse players without overpowering it even further in a controller-centric metagame. So this is going to be a topic that I just am never going to stop yelling about pretty much at all times, but I would really like to see maybe like an 80 strafing while aimed down sights hop up be introduced into the game. So like this weapon, you can just have a little bit more freedom of movement while using it, so it doesn't feel so bad to use. It doesn't feel like you were just stuck basically standing still while shooting this thing. Like something in that vein could be really cool, and I don't know if it would really affect the controller metagame too much. Maybe it would. I'm not positive. This is why I'm not actually the King of Respawn. I'm not actually a game designer. But like this is a weapon that to me does not feel great to use. Like it is acceptable. Like the DPS is good, and if I have to use it, then I will absolutely make it work. But I'm also going to throw it away for any of those other heavy weapons besides the 30-30 at the first possible instance. Like that's just a thing that is a truth. Like this is not a weapon that will take me to, or that I will not take to endgame if I can avoid it. And that makes me sad. Well, 34 minutes, and I am halfway through just the guns. This is a stupid video. I hate it. I don't know why you all are continuing to watch. Charge rifle. Not sure what to say. This is a weapon that is pretty universally hated. I like it a lot. I have a lot of fun with the charge rifle, and I use it frequently. Is it good for the game? No. Does it fit the theme of the game? I guess. But this is a weapon I just don't think that should even exist, to be completely honest. But it does, and it kind of claps people, especially the hipfire. Because, like, yeah, like the charge up of the hipfire, it just does that stupid figure 8 pattern that you can't, like, really track people with, but that actual big beam after the charge up period, that's always going to the center of your crosshair. So no aiming down sights required. So this is triple take tier in the sense that you don't have to aim down sights close range. This is a weapon that you can, and with a good aim, will be able to defend yourself with in a close range hot drop situation against the person who got more lucky than you and got the R9 or got the Volt or got the Mastiff or whatever. Like, triple take and charge rifle, good for the game in the sense that they are good weapons at hipfire. They are good weapons at close range. You can actually defend yourself with them. Longbow. Not a huge fan of this gun. It's okay, like it's fine, but I'm never going out of my way to get a longbow. Like, it's just a weapon that I only use because I have to use it, because it is just what the game decided to give me. And that's really as far as I go with it. Like, I just don't go out of my way to use this weapon ever. I also don't like Skull Piercer as a hop-up in general. I think it's just a really bad hop-up. It's a really bad design. Just giving you an item that gives you free damage for no downside, and it does not change like the way you play the game or the way you play the weapon. It's literally just, hey, have free damage because you got lucky. Like, that's just not cool. That's not something that I want to see in the game. So the longbow is just the embodiment of the Skull Piercer, and it's just, this kind of seems like a bygone weapon of a bygone design period within Apex, where before the game came out, and they just kind of really wanted the sniper rifle that, you know, can be like semi-auto and deal like good damage and have a single accurate bullet on like the triple take. Like, I kind of get it, but I think the longbow has just kind of fallen to time, and that it's just not really a super valid weapon in the game, and has not been for many, many seasons. The only thing that like makes it stand out or really be all that interesting is the fact that you can put Skull Piercer on it, so it just deals major damage with the Skull Piercer, and then without it, you just really don't care about the weapon. So this is definitely one that I would want to completely retool and redesign and reimagine. Again, perhaps with maybe a hop-up that would actually change the way you play with the weapon or make it interesting to use the weapon that does not just give you straight-up damage. Kraber is Kraber. Care package weapon. It's hype. It's fun. I don't think anyone really wants to see it changed. It's just... It's a slow monster that will kill anything in a headshot, and it's just fun to use. It's hype. Like, leave this alone. Don't change this weapon. It's not overpowered. It's not broken. Well, I mean, it is overpowered and broken, but like, it's overpowered and unfair in a fair way, I guess, if that makes sense. Like, it's all right. I wouldn't change this too much. Sentinel. Very underappreciated weapon. It's not super strong, but it's fun. I have a lot of fun with it. I like the fact that you have an interesting mechanic in charging it with shield cells to empower your shots and make it even stronger. It puts an onus on the user to, you know, maybe feel a little bit of anxiety when they charge it up to really want to hit those shots, and the payoff can be quite good. So this is a gun that I think is pretty good for the game. Quick scoping potential with this thing is pretty solid, so for a very high skill, high APM player, you can defend yourself like reasonably on a hot drop with this weapon. It's not the best, but yeah, I think I would rather have this than a G7 to defend myself at close range. The only exception might be is if I'm playing like Revenant, because Revenant can AD strafe at full speed while crouching and hip firing. So like I could get the crouch hip fire accuracy of the G7 while still AD strafing at full speed instead of AD strafing at like basically 0 speed. So like maybe I would keep a G7 if I'm playing specifically Revenant, but otherwise, like any other legend, I think I would just, you know, if I have to choose between G7 or Sentinel, I'm going to go for the Sentinel. I just feel like I could very quickly quick scope and tap heads, or just tap bodies with this thing for pretty decent damage. and I could defend myself in those close range fights. And then it's still just like, it's just a feel good, fun weapon to use outside of that in actual late game situations. Is it like a meta gun? Is it super strong? No, but it's good enough and it's fun. Like this is like a really, really well designed and really well balanced gun in my opinion, because like when I get hit, even with a headshot from a charge shot, I'm never thinking, wow, that's overpowered, that's ridiculous. It's like, damn, that guy hit a good shot and he put some actual resources into making that shot like hurt as hard as it did. I need to be careful, but you know, I'm not going to be super, super terrified of this thing either. So like, I just think this is an overall one of the best designed guns and best balanced guns in the game. I really like the Sentinel just from a design standpoint. If I were King of Respawn, I would make more guns that kind of fit in the bucket that this gun sits, or something like that spiritually is kind of in the same vein. If it's not a sniper rifle, just spiritually something that's like this, I think is really healthy for the game. Triple take. This is a honestly very, very strong weapon that I think is rated appropriately by the player base currently. I like where this weapon sits. I really, really do. Good at close range. You can defend yourself at point blank off hot drops with it. Good at mid range. Acceptable at long range, but probably the worst sniper of all the snipers at actual sniper tasks, because you have to charge it up to choke it down and get those 3 shots nice and tight together. And because of that, you're like, basically your ability to hit a really big meaty shot on someone from long range and then follow up with a second one is really bad, like with the Sentinel. But your ability to deal really high damage on one shot is great, just like the longbow or a charged Sentinel. You know, like longbow is skull piercer or Sentinel, I should specify. Like the triple take kind of runs the gamut, and it forces you to play in interesting ways to like get the most out of it in all situations. Like if you got to use it close range, well, again, like you're either quick scoping or you're crouch spamming and going for those hip fire, like really accurate hip fire shots, because like your spread on a crouched shot from the triple take is better than your standing hip fire on triple take. It's just kind of the way that the accuracy with this weapon works, and the way it's coded in the game is your 3 parallel-ish shots will actually, like their angle of differentiation or deviation, or however you want to say it, that angle is tighter while you're crouching, just ever so slightly. So it's a weapon that rewards really high APM play, really high actions per minute, like, you know, just really hyper cracked out plays if you're a zoomer and don't know what APM is. You know, it's just it's another well-designed weapon. I don't think it's overpowered. I think it's versatile in a good way, and I think it's overall healthy for the game. Would not change this. Shotguns. Eva has always, since day one, been a plenty strong weapon. And I think that it has been slept on by a lot of people. Maybe not ranked players, maybe not people who are like high plat, diamond, and above. I think all those players and pros have known always that the Eva is like really strong, but I just don't see players at like in pubs or at a lower level of ranked. If I'm grinding up ranked, I don't see people running this weapon. Granted, I suppose it's kind of hard to justify when, like, in previous seasons, the Mastiff has been absurdly powerful and the Peacekeeper has been absurdly powerful. It's hard to justify the Eva. But, like, just because these guns are so good does not necessarily make the Eva bad. Especially from a weapon category where you only need one attachment, and that is the shotgun bolt. There just isn't anything else. So it's not even like, well, the Eva is just your attachment holder for the Mastiff or Peacekeeper. It's like, it's just in and of itself, like, if you have to take this into mid or late game, it's still fine. You can play around it and just modify the way you're taking those close range engagements, so that way you're not going for the fast peaks with the PK and Mastiff to deal like 100 plus damage on a headshot and then full send with your R9. This is a weapon where you're just going to full send with this thing, period, and you're going to pressure with this thing, period. Or if someone is running away or they're at mid-range, you can just get consistent like 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, just bop, 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 bop damage from the Eva on those people. And it's just solid. It's a plenty powerful weapon, and I think it's very underutilized and underappreciated by the player base. I think this is a strong gun. And I really hope that someone who is wild enough to actually still be watching this video 44 minutes in, like just try to make this gun work, because trust me, it will do the work for you if you just understand how to utilize it and you put the effort in. Mastiff, still strong even after the nerf in Season 8. Still a gun that I think I'm going to use very, very frequently. But with the nerfs, I think I may actually just pick the Eva more consistently because it just kind of fits the way I like to play a little bit more. I like to just kind of more be an idiot and full send people and just have that consistent damage weapon like the Eva rather than playing super high APM, corner peaks, or head glitches or whatever with the Mastiff, where I just get that one quick like 110 plus damage headshot or whatever it is now after the nerfs, and then I just send after that. Like, I'm kind of more within this Eva playstyle. So I think that especially this season, like of Season 8 and Season 9 and beyond, I'll probably be going for the Eva over the Mastiff in a lot of situations, but like Mastiff is still an excellent, excellent weapon. I think it's in a much healthier state now that the damage has been brought down and the fire rate brought up a little bit. I really like where this gun is sitting right now. Beak, terrible. Really hate that it's even in the game. If I were king of respawn, I would go back to the better loot LTM we had, where everything was blue rarity or better, and there were no Mozambiques and there were no P20s on the floor. They just didn't exist. Like, I think that's where I would want to see the game as a whole start to go. It's a little bit outside the scope of this video, but the Mozambique is literally just a gun I want to see deleted from the game, because I understand that you want to have a power curve where like some weapons are just better than others and some weapons really are just kind of dog water. But at the same time, this thing is so bad and so terrible and so unusable unless you get the hammer points hop up that it's just like, I'm never going to go out of my way to carry this thing on the hope that I get a hammer point. And if I have the choice between this and a hammer point versus an Eva, I'm still just gonna take the Eva because it's gonna be that more consistent option for me 99% of the time. So I don't know. I don't fundamentally like hop-ups that just give you damage. Like, Skull Piercer, I think, is really terrible, awful for the game, and I don't think it should exist ever in Apex Legends. And then hammer points is one where it's like, okay, if you're going to be giving players free damage for the hop-up, at least the condition is it only goes on the two worst guns in the game. And it's what makes them, you know, actually an acceptable choice going into mid and late game. Like a hammer points P20 is honestly scary going into late game. That is a weapon that is powerful to the point of being frightening to play against. Especially because you play against it so infrequently that you're not going to be super skilled on dealing with it at all points in time. Like, you might be used to dealing with an R9, or you're used to dealing with a Mastiff, or you're used to dealing with a PK or a Kraber. Like, you're not used to dealing with a Mozambique or P20 on hammer points. But I still don't think that it's super I don't think it's compelling enough to occupy all of the floor loot spaces that these weapons take up. And when you hot drop and you get stuck with two beaks, or a beak and a P20 versus the bald gamer Wraith next to you that gets the R9 Volt or the double R9, it's like, well, I have just gotten so unlucky off drop that the last 5 minutes of my life have been completely wasted. And there was no sense in me having lived them because I had actually no fun. And I have even less desire to click that Q button again. And then if I do, I'm going to be so predisposed to drop cold that now I'm going to just not be playing the video game for the next 10 minutes until I find someone else to shoot. And it's just, you're going to be cold and your aim is going to be off, and it's just there. A lot of the problems of Apex Legends in the early game stems from the Mozambique and P20 even existing in the game. I think that if these weapons are going to exist in the game, I think these should kind of get that devotion treatment we were talking about earlier, where maybe they only spawn in preset places on the map, and they're always going to be there, and it's not going to be your typical floor loot. It's going to be like one of those little like weapon lockers that spawn that always have a weapon in them, or some other mechanic. And then you make it so, okay, you grab this weapon and it's already fully kitted, and there's only a few weapons that are like that, where instead of balancing it by having to pick up the attachments, or you have to balance it by like deciding how it'll stack up against all the other weapons in the game, you can just say, okay, instead of having these completely crap guns on the ground, you can go out of your way to get the fully kitted version of this, or the fully kitted version of the P20 if you want it. And if you want to play the game that way and you want to force people to deal with your hammer points, then go do that. It gets hammer points out of the loot pool. It gets the beacon and the P20 out of the loot pool. And it gives you more room to put better stuff in there to improve the loot experience from everyone. So you just have more consistency and you can actually compete off a hot drop consistently. Like, for a lot of people, that is the most fun part of the game is the hot drop situation. So I would, as King of Respawn, definitely want to see that improved. And I think that's a great way to do it. Peacekeeper, care package weapon. I had an idea a long time ago. I don't know how this would actually play out, but I think it could be really cool if they were to take the Peacekeeper and take the Mastiff and let them both retain a lot of their power, but they are frequently swapped between being floor loot and care package loot. Because I know that when the game had Peacekeeper as ground loot and Mastiff as care package loot, I would still keep the Peacekeeper 99% of the time, not because it was like necessarily the most powerful of the two, but because I was using the Peacekeeper all the time, like every game, that I was so used to the way the gun handled, the way the gun felt, the way the spread worked, the way the choke worked, that, you know, I would choose it for familiarity's sake over anything else. And then now, for the last few seasons that the tables have been turned, where the Mastiff is floor loot and the Peacekeeper is a care package weapon, I very infrequently will pick up the Peacekeeper if I have a fully kitted Mastiff. Season 8 notwithstanding after the Mastiff nerfs. Because I've used the Mastiff for so long now that I'm very confident in my Mastiff play. I'm very used to the way the Mastiff feels and handles and controls, and I'm not used to the Peacekeeper anymore. So my performance with the Peacekeeper, even with its damage being so high, my performance is just not as good as it would be with the Mastiff. So I'm kind of in a point right now where I think it would be interesting if the Peacekeeper and Mastiff were switched frequently between care package and floor loot, so that way your familiarity with the weapons is constantly being shifted, and the overall consistency of players at the whole with these weapons, I think, might go down by a few percentage points, and I'm curious if that might be enough to normalize the guns and make it so people are not so are not so like torn on whether or not these guns are fair or good for the game. If I were a designer, I think I might consider something like that to just shake up people's familiarity and muscle memory with their like big Yeeto Delito shotgun, as opposed to just constantly like fine-tuning the damage and the spread and this and that. Like just switch the guns, literally just flip between gun A, gun B, gun A, gun B, whether it's on a daily basis or every other day, or, you know, every time the map switches or something. Just make it rotate a lot so I cannot get used to the weapons. And I think that might be really, really good. But I don't know. I'd definitely like to hear your thoughts as viewers on this one as well, because I think that the Mastiff and Peacekeeper are both in like good spots as they are. So there's not a whole lot of sense in fixing a problem that may not actually be there. But if we're talking about changing things just for the sake of changing them and just trying something different, that might be a way that I would go about doing it. Finally, pistols. We already talked P20 a lot. RE45 I think is fine as it is. It's a pocket R9. It's like a 65 to 70% R99, which with how good the R99 is, like that's still good. Like a weapon that is literally the R99 but only 70% of it is still like plenty strong. So I don't have a whole lot of feedback on the RE45. Like, it's not a weapon that I super care about, but I think that of the low tier weapons in the game, I think that if I hot drop and I get 2 RE45s, I'm significantly less upset than if I get double Mozambique or double P20 or one of each, or, you know, one of those plus a RE45. Like, if I get double RE45s, I can make that work. I can defend myself against the better weapons. I can even outplay people who get a better weapon and better armor and whatever. And like the gun is good enough. Like, I think the RE45 is the floor for how poor a weapon can be, but still being okay in the grand scheme of the game, at least right now. So I'm really okay with the RE45, especially if it gets like if it gets a really popular or really common hop up to go into it, I think it could be something really, really special. Like, again, like, I know I've talked a lot about how much I don't like the Skull Piercer, but let's just say, like, what if the Skull Piercer is going to stay in the game forever, and that's just a given, and we can't change that? Like, our King of Respawn powers cannot touch the fact that Skull Piercer should not be a thing. What if the RE45 can have a Skull Piercer? Now all of a sudden you have an attachment holder weapon that is okay, but it's holding your Skull Piercer, and it's holding a barrel, and it's holding an optic, and now all of a sudden you find on the loot after your hot drop, you find a longbow DMR. It's like, huh, I've got a barrel, got an optic, got a Skull Piercer, got a really strong weapon on my hands now all of a sudden. I don't got to go out of my way to look for that Skull Piercer. I already have it. I have the thing. It's done. You know, all of a sudden you have this like gameplay loop where maybe the gun prior is not very good, but if you stick with it and you use it as the attachment holder, which is like a concept I've talked about since pretty much day one of Apex, like, you can have that loop, and I think that's potentially very good. So RE45, good design, not a weapon that I would change as the king of Respawn, and I like it. Wingman, overpowered, stupid, terrible, S tier. Honestly, the best for last, for sure. This is a weapon that in its current state, and I'm not trolling, I'm not being facetious, I'm not trying to just be like overly ridiculous for views and clicks and whatever, because this is already an hour deep in the video. The Wingman, in my opinion, is an unhealthy gun for Apex Legends. I don't think that it influences the metagame in a positive way. I don't think that this is good for the game. The Wingman is one of, if not my most used weapons. It is one of my favorite weapons to use. It feels good. I like it. I would be very sad to see it go. But as King of Respawn, if I had to delete a weapon from the game, I wouldn't delete the 30-30. As terrible as it is, I wouldn't delete the 30-30. I would delete the Wingman. Because why would I run a G7 Scout in pubs when I'm just going to be holding W and going crazy on people? Why would I ever pick up a G7 when I could have a Wingman? Why would I ever pick up a 30-30 when I could have a Wingman? Why would I ever pick up a Hemlock when I could have a Wingman? Why would I pick up a Spitfire when I could have a Wingman? Why would I pick up the Longbow when I could have a Wingman? The Wingman pistol has access to the Skull Piercer hop-up. It deals significant damage on a headshot. It is very ammo efficient. It has a good rate of fire, good DPS, good TTK, good headshot multiplier, even without a Skull Piercer. Offers basically full AD strafing speed while aimed down sights because it is a pistol. It's stable. It's accurate. It has a good bullet velocity. It has very little bullet drop. It is spammable at long range. It is spammable at mid range. It is spammable at close range. You can actually aim it down sights at close range without penalty because it's not like you're holding still. You can still basically move at full speed with this thing while having full accuracy. Like, this is a weapon that does it all. It does everything, and it does it well. And it's also a weapon that a lower skilled player or like an average FPS player cannot use that well. The consistency and accuracy is just not there for a lot of people. I see so many people saying they hate the Wingman. They think it's a horrible, awful, garbage, terrible gun. And it's like, well, maybe you're just, maybe it's just you that's a bad gamer and it's not the gun. Because just from a pure stats standpoint and everything, this thing is absurdly good. But this also brings up a good counterpoint, which I have to bring up as well, is that how often do you see people running the Wingman in LGS? How many Wingmans do you see there? I'm not a huge LGS watcher, so I don't have the definite answer, the gotcha answer to this question. But from what little I have watched, which again, to be fair and honest, is not too much, I don't see no stinking Wingmans. I don't even see them. Maybe I'm just missing it. Maybe I tuned in at the exact wrong times. But man, I don't see them. They're just not there. So a lot of this weapon's power is metagame dependent. Like when you're playing stupid in public lobbies where points and placements and literal dollars are not on the line, you can go wild and crazy and style on people with this weapon, and it is just a blight upon the game. Like, it just invalidates so much else in the entire game. But if you're looking at a metagame where survival matters, points matter, very aggressive, risky fights are not something that you're willing to take because it could be the difference between getting $0 and tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars in real life. Like, okay, I can understand maybe not taking the risk on running the Wingman and maybe taking something a little bit more consistent. Understood, 100%. But very few people play that metagame. Most people play how I play. They play stupid and they hold W in pubs. And I don't think this is a healthy gun for that. I would very much like to see this gun effectively just removed from the game. I don't want to see it nerfed to the point of being useless. I want the Wingman out. I want it gone. I want this gun care packaged is what I want. Care package this thing. Let it have Skull Piercer, fine, but it's going to compete with the Kraber as a care package weapon. I'm sorry. Like, I really don't think this gun should exist in its current state. I think this weapon should either be deleted from the game or care packaged. And because it will never be deleted because they've sold, you know, all these skins for it and stuff like that, and it's never gonna get removed. This is, if I were King of Respawn, I would care package the Wingman. 1,000,000%. I would care package it. That's my spicy take. I get one, right? Oh boy, we are an hour and 1 minute in. And we still have all of the legends. Okay. Bloodhound. Has wall hacks for the whole team. Can see through smoke. Has threat vision built in. Insanely good. Very powerful. I don't know if I like how good Bloodhound is right now. I don't think that Bloodhound is a blight upon the meta or upon the game, but if I were King of Respawn, I would probably not be okay with that. I just don't like the idea of things that were literally cheats in video games years ago becoming just built-in parts of characters now. I just don't like it. So not a fan. I would if I were King of Respawn, like, completely redesign Bloodhound to not have wall hacks. Same thing with Crypto, really. I would take away Crypto's wall hacks too. I just don't think wall hacks should be in the game, period. Or if they're gonna be there, then don't let it be a literal live look in on where people are and how they're moving. It should be like something much, much worse than that. That only gives you like basic general position data. Maybe gives you info on, like, you know, armor type and loadout and like equipment they have. So like you can know, like, well, do they have a lot of bats? They have a lot of ammo, or are they screwed? They got nothing. Like, maybe like information gathering in that you can learn their loadouts and all that stuff. But you know, you don't get like, okay, they're peeking you right at this moment, pre-fire, and you win kind of stuff. Like, nah, that's lame. Gibraltar, a lot of changes. A lot of changes over the seasons. I think Gibraltar is a necessary evil. I think this is a character that, even if the dome shield is a major, like, it informs the way the rest of the game is played in a lot of situations, especially in late game circles, especially like ALGS, you know, last 6 teams in a 10-meter cylinder, like, for the final circle. Like, I think it's a necessary evil to have Gibraltar in there. I wouldn't change Gibraltar too much more. Like, damage bleeding through the gun shield and all that is good changes. I think Gibraltar's fine. Lifeline, tap heals. If I were King of Respawn, you just get rid of the tap heals. Get rid of the the tap revives, I should say. Or at least put a major cooldown on it. So like once you do it once, then you get one and it doesn't come back for like 2 minutes or something, you know? I don't know what the time might be, but you can't just keep doing tap revives. I'm sorry. That just should not be a thing. Apart from that, her ult is terrible. Requires a rework. Not much to say there. Low profile character, very small hitbox, very good 80 strafing animations, especially with R9 Wingman Volt. Just good, all those good weapons like that. Very good animations to go along with it. Low profile is very much deserved for this character. But yeah, King of Respawn, decrees. No more ult. Change it to something else. Tap revives are significantly limited. Apart from that, game on. Pathfinder. Hard to say. A lot of buffs, a lot of nerfs. He's certainly better in Season 8 now that he's no longer a low-profile legend. But I still don't know why I would ever pick him over Horizon or Octane in their current states. These are much better team mobility legends, and I don't really know what Pathfinder is supposed to do. Like, Horizon is literally just better in pretty much every way, except for going like from point A to point B in a forward straight line really fast. Like, Pathfinder's good at that, but Octane's kind of better. I mean, I don't know. Like, I would only really play Pathfinder like in pubs, and I would not bring Pathfinder into ranked. I would rather have Octane or Horizon in ranked for team movement, because Horizon and Octane team movement is completely silent. People can't hear you coming. As King of Respawn, I would definitely make the sound of people flying through the air with Octane and Horizon abilities incredibly loud, like stupidly loud. And let Pathfinders maybe be a little quieter. Because Pathfinder needs something to differentiate him as like maybe a greedy mobility user. Whereas Octane and Horizon can both be greedy and team-oriented mobility users. Pathfinder is not a good team mobility user because the zipline, like reattaching stuff was nerfed into the ground as it should have been. So I just don't know what niche Pathfinder fills right now. I would definitely want to see some major changes coming to Pathfinder. To really differentiate him and make him a little bit more valuable. Like maybe give him better grapple cooldown, stuff like that. Wraith, still like the best legend in the game. I don't care what all the crying, salty, angry Wraith players are saying. This is still one of the best characters in the game. Has an incredibly high win rate. Is used on so many teams all the time. Just an excellent, excellent, excellent legend. The kit is so powerful. She's fine. I would not nerf her more. I wouldn't nerf her anymore. But I wouldn't give her anything either. I think Wraith should stay the same for a long period of time. I think like for a year plus, they should just not do anything to Wraith and see how all the other legends and weapons and maps evolve around her. I think this is kind of like, you know how earlier we talked about the R9 being like the rock of the game, in the sense like not like Dwayne the Rock Johnson, but like in the sense that it is like an anchor point where everything else is kind of built around. I find the R301 to be like one of those anchored build around points of the game, where like the R301, the R99, and Wraith, I think are like three of the things that everything else should adjust around. I think those are at like some interesting levels of power throughout the game, and I think everything else should kind of be adjusted around them and use those three things as comparison points for balance. I would not change Wraith any further. Banga, pretty terrible, even after her buffs. Her smoke is not very useful at all, especially after the changes to like visibility through caustic gas. Bangalore smoke seems to also have been affected by that. Perhaps it is for performance on Switch or something else, I don't know. But I think the smoke grenades that Bangalore offers are a bygone ability. I think that it is an outdated ability. I think that it is something that made a lot of sense and was really cool a million years ago when this game was initially in development and no one even knew it existed. In current year, I don't think they make any sense. I don't think they're very helpful, especially with Horizon ults being a thing, with Fuse existing, with grenade spam being as strong as ever, with Revenant Q just being an AoE damage, and reveal, Crypto being a thing, Bloodhound being a thing, revealing through the gas. Like, Bangalore just has it rough. There's no way to put it apart from that. She just does not have anything useful right now. Like, her ultimate is okay, I guess, but it's like, again, like, just have an Octane on your team and no one takes damage. Have a Horizon on your team and no one takes damage. Pathfinder can be selfish and just not take damage. Gibraltar can just just say, nah, no damage. Watson can just say, hey, no damage, sorry. Like, there is so much counterplay to it, which I think should, in some ways, yes, should be in the game, but otherwise, like, Bangalore, I think, is a legend that needs kind of a ground-up rework, just like Lifeline. I think that They just don't fit in the game anymore. And I don't think that like a buff to their numbers or stats or adding an extra line to one of their abilities where it does something extra cool, I don't think that's enough. I think Bangalore requires a complete and total rework from the ground up to make a little bit more sense. Like, what if Bangalore had passive fast reload? What if she had Call of Duty fast hands and she always is reloading guns faster and she can stack ammo higher? Maybe she also, like Fuse, can stack extra grenades, or, those are just small little riders, like, and those are not like overall like major reworks, I know, but like the smoke is just not useful. The zone control of her ultimate is not as useful as it should be, even with a really fast detonation time. I really think that something with Bangalore needs to give. I don't really know what, apart from like a full rework. Caustic, hard to say. He was nerfed into the ground this last patch. I think we need to give a little bit more time for the metagame to evolve, for Caustic play to evolve, and for a little bit of power to just generally be given back to Caustic before we go too in-depth with him. So I'm going to abstain from going in too deep into Caustic. Mirage, still terrible. Just not a good legend. But it's okay. I think it's fine because Mirage, to me, is kind of similar to Mozambique or P20 in the sense that you just literally never want those things unless you are in the absolute perfect situation for those things, and otherwise it's just not worth the risk of taking. But he's fun. He's funny. He fits in a public game setup just fine, and you don't RNG your way into him and then get upset about that like you would with the P20 or Mozambique. Mirage is something that you go out of your way to select. So, that's fine. I don't have any problems with that whatsoever. Like, a character who is just kind of by design terrible, but it's your choice to play him because you think he is fun, or like you think that the challenge is going to help you like develop as a player. Like, totally fine. As King of Respawn, I decree Mirage A-OK. Would not change him, and I think it's okay that we don't really see him in like super high level play or like ALGS kind of stuff. Octane. I like the fact that they finally reworked his jump pad. I think that is very healthy and good for the game. I don't like that they have not fixed the very, very awkward and weird interactions with his stim needle. Basically, like, you get those third hand animations where like he just grows a third arm to like put the thing in and take it out of his chest, and it's not that like the animation is weird. I don't care about the fact that the third arm is weird. What I care about is that with very particular timing, you can make it so like your guns just won't reload, or you get stuck reloading a weapon and your gun just gets frozen and like won't do anything for like 5-10 seconds. Like, your heals will get stuck. Like, the game will kind of confuse itself, and like as the stim needle expires and is pulled out, other actions kind of get interrupted in weird ways, and it makes Octane very awkward to play. Secondly, when using weapons that, if you have the stim needle in with your left hand, right, like this, and then your gun that you're holding uses a one-handed animation, sometimes they will have a different recoil property or a different recoil visual animation, which I understand. Like, if you're holding your gun with one hand, it's going to recoil differently, sure. But like, it only seems to affect basically like the Wingman and the P20 and the RE. Like, it affects like all like the pistols, basically. And it doesn't affect like the R9 or the R301 or a Kraber. Like, those guns, you don't even give a crap about that. But on your like pistols, it seems like your weapon will recoil visually in a different way that will actually cover the center of your screen and make it so you cannot see what you're shooting at. The Wingman is the worst offender of this. And I covered that in a video like a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago at this point, where I showed like, okay, if you have Gibraltar with your gun shield up, or you have Octane with a stim needle in your chest, the Wingman is demonstrably worse because you cannot see what the hell you're shooting at, because the gun is just in the center of the screen as it's recoiling, whereas normally it recoils up and to the right and it does not block your view. And like, little things like that never being addressed is foolhardy to me. I think that Octane should absolutely have those things looked at and adjusted. before we start going, oh god, Octane is so toxic in ranked because everyone has jump pads on you and full sends you as a team. Like, that's an easy fix. There's already a sound effect for people flying through the air as I took an Octane jump pad. It's like this very faint, like air, like ozone tearing kind of sound, like a spaceship is re-entering atmosphere or something, but very quiet. Make it louder. It needs to be way, way, way louder than footsteps, louder, like gunfire levels of audio. Because if a team full sends you off that, it should not be a secret, should not be a surprise. You should hear the jump pad boing, and you should hear the ripple sound of the air very clearly. Because that is critical info that will instantaneously lose you games. That's an easy fix. I want to see the difficult fixes for Octane come in. Watson. Don't play much Watson. Don't really have much to say. Crypto. We already talked about him with Bloodhound. Wallhack's bad. Give him something else that's not just see enemy through wall, pre-fire them perfectly, win game. Don't like that. Revenant. Silence. Cool ability. Like it. Forces people to play in a different way. Makes the character legitimately scary to see and come up against because they're supposed to be. Good design. Totem, not the best design, especially when compared or when combined with Octane, especially when compared with Horizon, because again, silent, full sending team aggression, but without the chance of losing and dying, is very powerful. I think Revenant is okay as he is. But you gotta fix Octane and Horizon. You gotta make those sounds actually audible. Gotta make them loud. Doing those couple of things, I think, will bring Revenant back in line. Loba. I think she's fine. I don't think she needs too much balance-wise. Just, the teleporting bracelet is still not functioning 100% correctly, according to Loba players. I don't play much Loba, so I don't really know. But if there really is something there, as the King of Respawn a decree, that should be fixed. And Loba is otherwise fine. I don't think that she needs to be a top-tier legend. I think she's A-okay for pubs, and then that's not a problem. Having a legend that's just really good for pubs and can normalize your loot and let you move faster in pubs without actually boosting your speed. Pretty cool. Like it. Rampart. Terrible. Awful. Dumpster. Garbage. One of the worst in the game. But again, I think that given the fact that she has a wall, given the fact that with her turret, she effectively can have like unlimited ammo as an extra resource to just throw at enemy teams, the stuff she has is objectively good, but it is balanced in such a way that it is very, very weak and crappy. I think Rampart is just, she has to be bad. I don't think that a strong Rampart would be good or healthy for the game. This is a very polarizing legend, which she is either horrible or she is overpowered dumpster garbage that ruins the game, and there is kind of no happy medium. Like, I don't know as King of Respawn what I would do to fix Rampart, but hopefully, if there's ever like PvE in Apex or something like that, maybe Rampart might be fun and make sense, and something where you can give her a crap ton of power, but you're not playing against humans, and like it'd be fine. But as long as this is a humans versus humans game, don't like what she offers. Horizon. One of the best legends in the game, even after being nerfed repeatedly, like every season since she's come out. I think the big thing with Horizon at this point is that her lift, while it is visually very obvious, it is, again, silent. You cannot hear people that are in the lift. Like, I think that a person that is in the gravity lift should just make a constant noise that you can hear. Because, look, you cannot visually be aware of all the things happening around you at all times. You can't see everything, especially for Switch players who have a absolutely tiny field of view and low resolution to boot. Which, granted, look, Switch hardware is like 1 million years old. It's like a It's like weaker than most cell phones nowadays. Understandable. It's a miracle that Apex even works on Switch. So like don't take this as like toxicity, but like look, audio cues need to be better. Just be careful. Like, I'm not saying that the audio team at Respawn is bad. They do a bad job, or the audio doesn't work, or just no. Just if I were king of Respawn, I would want to take over the audio mix, and I would want to tweak things a bit, and I would want pretty much any character who is airborne because of an ability, not because of jumping, not because of wall kicks, but because specifically an ability that puts them in the air, like Pathfinder Grapple, Pathfinder Zipline, Octane Jump Pad, Horizon Lift, anything else that I may be forgetting. I want all of those abilities to be very loud. You need to be able to hear them clearly, to know that danger is coming, even if you don't see the danger, and you can play around it appropriately. The game is getting so deep into the crazy mobility area and standpoint that you gotta have something like that's given back to the rest of the players. And yeah, more audio cues. Good for game. IMO. Finally, we have Fuse. Kind of sucks. Kind of like Rampart. Not as bad as Rampart. He's definitely better than Rampart. But, geez, what's up with that ultimate? If you land the ultimate directly on someone's head, it only does 5 damage and doesn't shell shock them or burn them. Like, what the hell's up with that? As King of Respawn, I decree that the Ring of Fire from his ultimate is deleted, and Fuse's ultimate will now deal minimal damage but give a guaranteed shell shock on enemies in an AoE. So it fires very fast, deploys very fast, explodes very fast, minimal damage, but shell shocks them. So their move speed is reduced to basically 0. So your goal with Fuse is basically to be like a stormtrooper. And okay, not like, and okay, that was a poor word choice. Like a shock trooper, I guess, where like you see an opponent, you get in, you ult them, you basically force them to stay in place and stay in position, and your team pushes and aggroes them and fights them. Or you follow up with your cluster missile, or you follow up with grenades or whatever. And like something like that, I think, is probably very cool. The Ring of Fire that you can hit someone with perfectly and aim it just perfectly where, you know, it'll literally fall on their head and they take 5 damage and they just get their sprint broken. They don't get stunned or anything unless they manually choose to make the bad decision to run through the fire and then take 35 plus the slow plus burn afterwards. Like, it's like your opponent has to make a bad choice in order for your ultimate to do anything as Fuse. So changing it in such a way where it's not reliant on your opponent making a mistake or making a bad choice, and instead just gives you the reward, period, end, I think would be better design. Just keep the damage low and force players to actually use their guns and their aim and their movement to capitalize on the ult. That's how I would redo it. But his tactical is actually fine. Like, the hitbox on it is huge, so there's been plenty of times where I've just been randomly firing the thing, or I would fire it and I'm like very confident that like it's nowhere near an opponent, but it still just like locks on and like hits them and it does like major damage. It's pretty wild how good his Q is. His passive with double grenades is absurd, and his passive with like fast grenade like velocities absurd. Like, give Fuse 8 arc stars and you have a dead enemy team on your hands. Like, there's just nothing they can do between that and the cluster missile breaking their sprints and forcing them to kind of like not move as much as they otherwise could. So they're more likely to take the arc star damage. It's absurd. Like, I think that Fuse in a lot of ways is unhealthy for the game, and it's probably a good thing that his ult sucks. But yeah, I don't know. I think I would go a different direction with Fuse for sure. But I think overall, he's like fine. He's like a mid-tier legend. Like, if I'm gonna be like, if I have to play ranked and I have to play legend roulette and I have to pick like a mid to low tier legend, I think Fuse would be one of my top picks for like the mid to low tier characters. For like, if I have to play one of them in ranked, Fuse would probably be the one I would go for, because there are a lot of good things you can do with him. It's just that other legends are simply better and more attractive. Like, yeah, I think that's kind of the way I want to go about it. Fuse is not necessarily underpowered or not good enough. It's just that other legends are so good. Like, if I'm going to play ranked, the legends I'm going to reach for in no particular order are Bloodhound, Gibraltar, Wraith, Octane, Watson, Crypto, Revenant, Horizon. Like, I'm going to reach for all of those legends before I reach for Fuse. But if I have to choose between Fuse, Pathfinder, Caustic, Mirage, Loba, Rampart, for ranked, I think Fuse is up there for one of, like, the better picks that I would go for. And that'll finish us off here. Wow, this was like an hour-and-a-half video. How stupid was this? I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you got a good nap. And I hope to see you again sometime very soon for maybe some better content. Once I am fully moved into my new house and I have my new job started, and I can actually focus on making good quality content again. So I hope you all look forward to that. See y'all soon. Take care.